Company X sent the goods and an invoice, and the payment deadline is approaching. They expect to receive the money owed by customers because Company X has done their part. At this point, there are two possible options. The client pays at or before the deadline, or he pays later or doesn't pay at all. We've seen the accounting transaction for the first scenario. The second one is more interesting. If a client doesn't pay us on time, but we have every reason to believe he will pay soon, we can keep the amount of receivables on our balance sheet. And, in addition, we will usually accrue interest for the delay. The amount and the terms regulating the accrual of interests for a delayed payment are typically agreed upon in the original sales contract that the two sides have signed. Once the client pays us the original amount he owed us, then we will stop accruing interests and we'll create a new invoice with the interests he owes us. Unfortunately, there is another option. The client fails to pay us and cannot do it because their company defaults. If this happens, we must use the help of a debt collector and start a legal procedure. However, often when a situation like this occurs, the entire amount the client owes us becomes irrecoverable. So, what we must register accounting-wise is the following. Show that the trade receivable we were expecting is not to be expected anymore by crediting trade receivables with the amount of the irrecoverable debt. And add a cost line for irrecoverable debt, which will offset the revenues we've registered but have not collected. Sometimes, companies know it is normal to expect a certain portion of bad debt, as the one we just saw. If a firm works with 10,000 clients, it is normal to expect that 50 or 100 will have difficulties and won't be able to pay for the goods they have received. This is one reason some companies make an allowance for such bad receivables. Let's say historical evidence has shown Company X that approximately 1% of the total amount of trade receivables it has at the end of a calendar year will become irrecoverable debt. Well, if the company expects that to happen, it can simply charge an expense in the year in which the related sales took place. Sounds reasonable, right? This way, the matching principle would be respected. The total value of trade receivables becomes lower and reflects the actual amount the company expects to receive throughout the year. And then an expense for irrecoverable debts is created in this year's P&L. Great! So, this is how companies account for expiring invoices and clients who cannot pay their payables. Moreover, we learned how to provide for the expected level of bad debts. In our next lesson, we'll mention an additional subtlety that can probably improve a company's receivables collection process. So don't miss it, as it is important. This will do for now. Thanks for watching.